So today we're going to talk about what I would consider the epitome or the ultimate of personalized psychotherapy. Okay, personalized psychotherapy. And I'm using this term because this is a society term, psychotherapy. Of the dimag nu theek karna, inu psychotherapy kehndे. So this is psychotherapy. And I would have to say that humans, especially over the course of the last several decades, last century for sure, century and a half, the understanding of the mind has become more sophisticated in terms of the language that is used to describe it, and actually has kind of made it inaccessible. So it's kind of odd, right? You have a mind. Oh, but don't explore that. You need a therapist for that. But it's your mind. It's kind of weird, right? Like your mind. We have become disempowered to explore our own mind. I just want you to think about that, right? How do you build a relationship with yourself if your own being is off limits to explore? And by definition, or you can explore it, but you need this help, and you need this program, you need a system. And without that, you're better off not doing it. Because who can afford $300 an hour? It used to be $200 an hour, now it's $300 an hour. Who can afford that? And who can afford that for a long period of time? I'd be all over it if everyone could afford it and it was accessible and there was like a therapist for every person. That'd be great. But in the world that NOM exists in, it's not accessible. So then I'm very interested in this concept of personalized psychotherapy. And so in order to sort of understand personalized psychotherapy, we need to first understand, how do you get good psychotherapy? And I'm gonna just there's a principle I learned in medical school that was very helpful, and it's called garbage in equals garbage out. I learned this because I created a survey in medical school, and it was a poorly thought out survey that asked the wrong questions. And so then I asked a bunch of survey respondents, but the questions were vague and they were odd and they were different. Didn't ask the right questions, asked too many of the wrong questions, and then who could blame the participants? They gave me answers that were vague and non-specific and not answering the question. And so someone told me, a researcher said, garbage in, garbage out. If you feed the system garbage, you can't expect anything other than garbage. Gand vich ponde hain, gand baar nikluga. Same thing when you eat something. If you eat a donut, you can't expect your body's going to make like a healthy meal of it. Garbage in means that you're going to get the same return. So, psychotherapy is only as good as the information you put on the table. Put that right. Try this one. It can only work if the input is honest, complete. Meaning, if the person has access to every bit of information and it's honestly delivered, then you're going to get feedback that is effective. So your feedback will be effective. That's pretty basic, right? If you tell somebody half-truths and deceptions, is the feedback you're going to get effective? ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਝੂਠ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ ਕੁਝ ਦੱਸਣਗੇ, ਉਹ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੋਊਗਾ? Is that going to be effective? And the trouble, so that's pretty obvious. No, your psychotherapy will be affected adversely when you leave things out. But why do people leave things out? Very good reasons. Very good reasons why things are left out. Things are left out voluntarily, don't feel safe, not the right time, In therapy, we talk about the idea of closure. And nothing's ever closed when you leave a session. You can't close things off when you leave a session. It's not that easy. Things continue to work for days, weeks, months, once you've opened them. The mind is like that. Faster if you have a self-therapy practice. Then you can open things, close things, process them, done. Fast. Seconds. Milliseconds. But if you are not in the practice, you open something, it's going to kind of hang out in your working memory and slowly recede into long-term storage over the course of weeks, typically. They say 72 hours up to 12 weeks. That's usually what they say. That stuff slowly works back into long-term storage. So for good reason, people don't want to talk about stuff. Involuntary. What that means is being dishonest, but not knowing that you're dishonest. Being incomplete with the information, but not knowing that you're being incomplete with the information. That's dissociation. The involuntary holding back, changing of the information, you don't know what you don't know. That is the bigger thing. Some people get really frustrated with me. Why don't you tell me what to do, Dr. Gill? Because I don't want to lie to you. Because I know I'm not getting complete information. I know that I can't understand much about anybody in an hour with them, or 30 minutes, or 5 years even, right? Like, how can you really know the state of a marriage? Should I leave him? Should I stay? I don't know. I don't know what you know. I don't know that you know that you know, so how can I know? It's confusing. So I prefer to not give the advice because I don't have the full information. And that is frustrating. But anyone who's ever asked me for advice, though, anyone ever asked me for advice? What kind of stuff do I tell you? If you ever do ask me for advice.
Meditate.
Yeah, meditate. Pray. Journal about it. Write a pros and cons list. I'd give you something that you do on your own. Because even though I may not know everything that you need to know to make a decision, you know everything you need to know to make a decision. Some part of you does. But it is blocked. So the disclosure of information is blocked. So now we have a problem. So we have a mind that's fragmented into all these little pieces and stuck in some kind of pattern, and blocked from sharing completely with someone. So how does a person like this heal? So I'll tell you from a trauma therapy perspective what we do, okay? Because it's very important that you understand why we do things the way we do things. Right? So let's say out of this system there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 parts, okay? 11 parts that need information, need something, need help, okay? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, okay. 11 parts that are needing of stuff. So what we do in therapy, in ego state therapy in particular, we start asking questions and we try to find like what I'm going to call a star. You know, everyone has a hidden couple of little gems. I'm just marking them with a star here. And what they are is they are high resource states. High resource states. And these little parts have power. They have strength, they have energy. And what we do, slowly, is we just introduce the damaged parts to these parts. And they start exchanging information. And then what happens is quite beautiful. You get fusing. Parts start to kind of combine. And they start to all become strong. They multiply. The high resource state multiplies, and then we do it again. We introduce this part. And then this part starts to change. Releases some of that stuff. And then this part starts to change, and so on and so forth over the course of months and years, depending on how complex the system is, eventually until the system is more unified. And at that point the person says, oh, I feel good now, I feel enough, I feel self-supported, I feel all these good things, I don't feel the need to do all those bad things, and I'm good. That's called ego state therapy. That's how we approach the mind of someone who's had a lot of pain in their life. Little steps, and that's good. That's not a bad thing. If you have the money and time and energy to afford, I'm a big fan of ego state therapy. Find a therapist that does that. There's several systems. There's internal family systems. IFS, that's a big one. We use a lot of comprehensive resource model. Therapists who do these kinds of things, your time is likely to be better spent. Just as an aside. But what you have to understand, and I want you to remember this is very important. Does this seem onerous? Does it seem like, oh wow, it's a little, it takes time, right? And I'll just illustrate it as, it's like you're counting consciously 1 billion pennies by hand. Can you imagine? How many pennies do you think you can count in a minute? Just take a guess. 60, yeah. 700-800? In a minute? Smart guy. Okay, good. Just for simplicity of math, I'm going to say, so 1 billion pennies, and you have to count, and when you count 1 billion pennies, you're healed, your brain's good. And let's say you can count at a rate of 100 pennies per minute. How long would that task take? Ask your body, not your brain. Take the first answer that comes up.
Minutes.
How many years? How many years popped up? Just curious.
8.
8 years. Okay, what else?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Fast counter, you. So if you actually do the math on this, it depends on like how many hours a day you can actually count. So you know, if you count 24 hours a day, it takes 20 years. If you count more reasonably 8 hours a day, it takes 60 years. That's how long it takes to consciously engage with 1 billion bits of information and to categorize it. And I don't know about you, but you want to take 20 years to heal? I don't know. It's but when you try to consciously do something, billion is beyond conception. It's a very large number. We can conceive of 10,000, we can conceive of 5,000, but when you start getting above like to 100,000, it may as well be 1 million, it may as well be 10 million, it may as well be 1 billion, it may as well be 1 trillion. It's all a lot, and a lot more than I can reasonably do in my limited amount of time. So when we are talking about trauma and diseased bits of information, I just want to offer to you that we're not talking about billions, we're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions. And so people tell me things like, oh, I want to know why I'm doing this. I'm just telling you, if your job is to find the 10 dimes amongst 1 billion pennies and you find all 10 dimes and then you're good, it's going to take a while. Finding the roots of the traumas and all this stuff, it takes a while. EMDR, usually you need about 20 sessions, 30 sessions. You have to be persistent. And you can carve out a decent amount of things. Some things they do it faster, like ART. Maybe a little less holistically, let's just say. But the symptom relief happens. But if you want to actually process and heal, you need a system that works better. So then, would it go faster if you had a machine that could count maybe 50,000 pennies? That'd help, right? Now all of a sudden, if you had 50,000 pennies, maybe instead of 20 years, it might take 3 months. Machines exist. Trillions of dollars are exchanged every day in the world. Every day, trillions of dollars pass hands, right? That's a lot of people. There's systems, there's ways to count. You don't have to do it physically, because physically it's crazy. It's just insane. So I suggest to you, don't approach therapy the same way you approach counting pennies. You wouldn't take this task on. I would suggest to you, don't do this. At least in that brute force, I have to sort of have a therapist with me for everything, and without a therapist I'm not going to do anything. Because I'm going to tell you, there's parts of you, like this little star part, that does know everything they need to know about you. So when I tell a part to talk to another part, I just say something like this. I say, may the highest and wisest part of you, gently speak to the part of you related to this problem in the wisest, gentlest, safest way. And I don't know what information they exchange. I have no idea. But I don't need to know. The exchange happens though, and just a tiny little bit. This part becomes more like a star, less like a dim kind of dark thing, and more functional. Believe it or not, this isn't new to our world. This is done a lot in prayer. Okay? When you connect to nature, things bigger than you, all these little star parts, they have their source in that. That's what I found when I've gone into the deep therapy world of healing complex PTSD. I found these elements that people have inside of them that help them relax, that help them feel okay, that help them maybe not often, they don't come up, but they come up. They all come, and they're a resource, and that resource can be engaged repetitively. The more often you do it, the more often, the faster you'll get better. And every now and again, you'll come across like a monster block. Like a big scary block, right? Okay, yeah, then you need a therapist. Therapist can give you the resources that you need to help, this part connect with this little star and kind of go through and connect. You do need help. Don't get me wrong. People need help. But if you don't have a daily practice, you're going to be counting pennies manually, and that's why people give up on therapy. Lots of people give up on therapy. Lots of people give up on trauma therapy. Takes too long. Don't have enough money. Don't have enough energy. They give up on recovery. They give up on healing. They just accept daily drinking or daily torture or whatever the heck it is. And the thing is that this is the reason. If someone asked me to count 1 billion pennies, I'd probably give up too. Unless someone told me there was a counter that could count 100 pennies a second. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'll take that on. I can do that. Push a button, count 100,000. Okay, yeah, I can sit there and push buttons. When you engage with higher systems, your system, this goes beyond, there's science, right? There's lots of science. There's randomized controlled trials studying prayer and depression, prayer and anxiety, prayer and addiction. AA, the most successful program to treat addiction, operates entirely using prayer. And I used to kind of be like, oh, that's just kind of woo-woo. But you can't ignore it when millions of people with an intractable problem that has tried every form of psychotherapy gets better with this. You can't ignore that. And as a trauma therapist, these are highly traumatized people going into a system, coming out, not just not drinking, but coming out functional. Boundary systems get better. How is this all working? As a trauma therapist, I have to ask myself the question, because it takes me years of working with someone to get them to that point. And at NOM, I would suggest to you, your brain is no different than anyone else's brain. Joe's brain is the same as Sally's brain, same as Bhupinder's brain, same as every other brain. There's no difference in the principles that govern. Your blocks are different, you've heard me say that. Your blocks are different, the content of your life is different, but the system's not different. And so if something works for somebody else, the question you should be asking is, how do I make it work for me? The question is not, oh, I worked for them. Can I try something else because that didn't work for me? That shouldn't be the question. If you make that your question, you rob yourself of the resources your system holds. And this is why I call it personalized psychotherapy. Prayer, intention setting, whatever it is you do to introduce these little parts of hurt with the parts of healing inside you, beyond you, that daily connection actually works. It's been used for thousands of years. There's evidence for it. There's systems that have been designed to harness it, like certain like organized religions. Engaging with these things achieves this objective. So you can't be honest and complete with things outside of you. It takes too much time. How long is it going to take to tell someone every detail of everything that's ever happened to you in your whole life? How long do you think? Years. Come on, who's going to listen? For years. To you. And everything about you. And I assure you, Dr. Gill's the last one who's going to listen to you. I'm lazy, remember that. That's why I do these Nom Academy videos. I kind of like to offload the... I prefer to offload it to higher powers and stuff. Because they can actually do the job. If you have a way to connect to them, if you are willing to be courageous, willing to deal with your own blocks and your own issues as to why these things don't work or who hurt you and all that stuff that makes it cloudy, and just accept that you're designed to connect. You're designed to connect to other people, you're designed to connect outside of you, you're designed to connect inside of you. If you're willing to accept that, then there's lots of ways to heal. And it's evidence-based. So, personalized psychotherapy, that's how I would approach your daily practice of meditation and prayer. But the thing is about prayer, right? Most people, prayer is like a personalized thing. Only the priest tells you how to pray, or nobody. You pray however you like. But remember, you're blocked through dissociative barriers. You're not going to ask what you don't know what to ask, right? If you don't know what you don't know, you're not going to mention that. It's going to be a blind spot, okay? The whole trouble with prayer, meditation, yoga, and all these things, let's just take prayer, because that's the actual asking. The whole trouble is you don't know what you don't know. Someone came to me with chronic pain for, I don't know, a couple of decades, and I said to him, have you ever thought to, like a big fan of Jesus, have you ever thought to mention your pain to Jesus? What? Never thought about that. Seriously. In all these years, it never occurred to him or her to add that. And that's not, well, duh. No, that's actual legitimate block. Blind spots hit you like a truck because you just don't know what you don't know. Dissociation is really, really powerful, this concept here. So AA, in their 12-step program, right, people, lots of people pray to God that their addiction goes away. God, and it doesn't work. And they give up on it. It doesn't work and they give up on it. Because it's too big of a prayer. It's too much. You gotta chunk it down into 12 steps. First you start with powerlessness. Give up control. Try to. Then you go step by step. And then it's more manageable. I'm just telling you the science. In psychotherapy, we call this titration. If something is overwhelming, right? The image of the bad thing is overwhelming. What do? We say, imagine it 100 feet away. Imagine it on the moon. You should try this. You're bothered. Imagine that feeling. Some of you having a negative feeling right now, just imagine in your mind the moon and then just shooting this thing all the way to the moon. Just imagine putting it on the moon, just leaving it there. Come back here. It's further away now. That's how powerful your mind is, right? You can move things away, you can turn things into black and white from full color, you can take away the audio, you can modify. And if you don't know what to ask for, then you can read things. You can take guidance. Hey, maybe mention, and I'm telling you, it's as simple as this thing hurts. Consciously ask and connect that to the thing that feels good. A lot of people who regularly do yoga and they access high resource states, they forget they actually have any kind of pain. or they minimize it, or they don't think they have the right to connect it, but it's your mind. Or they think, oh, I shouldn't do that because someone needs to tell me that I can do that. So, today is just kind of about talking about a daily practice of gentle intention setting, connecting the higher resource parts to the lower resource parts is a really good way to move yourself forward. And when you run up against something and it's like big and you don't know what to do, then go find somebody. But don't stop. Daily, taking steps. If you have to count a billion pennies, don't stop counting. Get smart about it, but don't stop counting. Don't give up on it because it's your life, right? And I think your life is worth living. Your life is worth having a calm, peaceful existence. I believe that's possible. And I believe you're worth it. You have to believe that it's possible, and you have to believe that you're worth it. You have to have some kind of map to get there. You have to be empowered to actually walk a journey. Maybe you need a group of people walking with you. You know, anything is possible. Just because you've struggled with something for 20 years doesn't mean you have to struggle for it for 21 years. You know, so you have to kind of approach things with optimism, and I consider prayer, intention setting, if you don't like that word, request making, if you prefer that word, request making, right? To be the most personalized of therapies. And that's because some part of you knows exactly the best and wisest way to deal with this in the safest way. And that is the gentlest. It's also the gentlest, right? A daily practice to heal is a gentle way to heal. And someone like me coming in and mucking it all up, I might be okay at it, but I'm not perfect. I can make mistakes. I can, we went too far, too fast, talked about too much. Or didn't, actually, the other way around, didn't talk about enough. Trauma-informed care has become trauma-phobic care. Nobody wants to deal with trauma anymore. But no one's available to deal with trauma anymore. So we get stuck. So, I could ramble on for a while. Any questions or comments about this? Did any make sense?
Yes.
Well, perhaps we'll leave it at that. And forgive me if I've misspoken. And by the way, this is not to say don't do psychotherapy, okay? I think I've said that a few times. It's good. Just don't rely on the psychotherapist to heal every problem you got. Because it ain't going to happen. A robust self-therapy practice makes the seeking of psychotherapy worth the money you put into it. No daily practice, it's a big ocean and they took a little cup of it out. How effective is that? You can decide that. So a daily practice is really what's going to determine whether that big expensive yoga retreat you go to, or that big expensive thing you do, or that big whatever. A daily practice is going to make it useful and stay with you and grow. Our capacity grows, right? So maybe you invent a penny counter and you start at like 1,000 pennies a second or a minute. That's pretty good. Well, after using it for a while, maybe you upgrade it and now it's like 30,000 pennies a minute. Right? The more you use it, the better it gets. Maybe you can get to 1 billion pennies a minute. Right? So that's kind of you have the ability to upgrade your system. And the more you use it. And it's a limitless thing. So you can, the more you use it, the better and faster you get. And the more you realize you have to do. So, yes?
I guess I have a little bit of a question, like, for the honest and voluntary and all of that. What if someone has, like, told themselves a lie for so long that they end up believing it? Wouldn't that fall under them being honest because they think they are, or would it still?
So, yeah, this is a great question. So basically, self-deception to the point of belief. And it doesn't change the reality that it is deception. Deception is deception. Lies are lies, truth is truth. Truth is absolute, it is not relative. I hope I don't offend anybody with that, but truth is truth and is everything else. What that means is the efficacy of a believed self-deception. A good example of that is like something your parents programmed into you to be true that's untrue, right? That you're bad because you do this. And you say it enough that you feel like it's true. You are bad. That doesn't change the fact that it's false. It's a false belief. Truth is truth. Truth is truth. And that makes it a deeper problem, right? It takes more time, more pennies to count. But it doesn't change. So, talking about it as like, hey, I have been saying this, and I do believe it, that's an example of a truth element coming into it. Now, at least you're honest about saying what you believe. Right? And that's going to help. As a therapist, you can do a lot more with someone who says, I know this isn't true about myself, but lots of me believes it. That's a true statement. And so then that person's going to be able to help you more. And if you enter a situation, every counselor has seen this, where someone really believes something that's untrue. Well, then it takes, the therapist has to figure it out. May or may not happen. Maybe they buy into it, right? Some people go in with victim consciousness. They externalize the therapy. It's like, this bad thing happened to me, those people are bad, and the therapist is like, yeah, those people are bad. Yeah. and it might be true, they might be bad, but you're suffering in the victim consciousness. I've seen therapy go on for 20 years like that. And is that person any healthier at the end of it? I'm sure they feel good. They feel good giving the money. Good business model, right? But are you further ahead? So these are the things that there's lots to say about therapy, and and one thing that is true is you can only heal to the level, if that therapist who will do that is also in victim consciousness themselves. You can only heal someone to the level you've healed yourself. That's just the reality of it. You can only heal someone to the level you've healed yourself. I tell students that all the time. If you haven't healed much, no one's going to feel safe going any deeper than that with you. And that's okay. You know, this is better than nothing. So, it's actually very much, in my view, very okay to ask your therapist what they do for self-therapy. And that's a very appropriate question to be asking somebody. That to me is like a qualification of being a therapist. What do you do to heal? I think people need to know that. They deserve to know that. And if they can't tell you, or if they tell you, oh, it's not your business, it's private, or I don't need to heal, I'm good. Just my humblest suggestion. I hope that doesn't offend somebody. I'll leave it at that. Good question. Thank you.